Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Discover Your Dreams. This space is rooted in the grounded life philosophy, where inner peace becomes the foundation for purposeful living. Here we focus on regulation, awareness, and conscious self-leadership as a way of returning to ourselves and meeting life from a more grounded place. Before we begin today, take one slow, intentional breath and let yourself arrive fully in this moment. Notice your body, how it feels, how it's positioned, what it's holding. This matters because today we're talking about something many people do without even realizing it. Something subtle, something quiet, yet powerful enough to shape the entire direction of a life. We're talking about outsourcing your power. So often, we look outside ourselves for permission to act, for certainty before we move, for direction when we feel unsure, for validation to feel worthy, and for safety when life feels unpredictable. And if we're being honest, turning outward can feel easier. It can feel safer, at least for a little while. But over time, that habit comes with a cost that accumulates quietly until it becomes impossible to ignore. And that cost is freedom. Outsourcing your power doesn't always show up in big dramatic moments. More often, it appears quietly in the small ways you move through your day. Sometimes it looks like needing constant reassurance before you take a step. It can look like ignoring your own instincts because someone else seems more certain. It might show up as waiting for another person to tell you what's right, or abandoning what you feel simply because someone disagrees. It can also take the shape of people-pleasing, saying yes when your whole body is whispering no. It can look like consuming endless advice, hoping someone else will finally give you the answer you already sense. It might be the habit of second-guessing yourself over and over, or feeling like you need external validation before you can make even the smallest decision. And underneath all of these patterns, there's usually one core experience: a lack of safety in trusting yourself. This is something we have to understand with compassion. Most people don't outsource their power because they're weak or incapable. They do it because at some point in their lives, trusting themselves stopped feeling safe. Maybe they were criticized for their ideas or feelings. Maybe they were dismissed when they spoke up. Maybe they were controlled by someone who needed to be in charge. Maybe they were punished for being honest. Or maybe they were taught, directly or indirectly, that other people's needs and opinions mattered more than their own. So the nervous system did what nervous systems do. It adapted. It learned a strategy for staying safe in an environment that didn't feel safe. And that adaptation often becomes a quiet, persistent belief. Someone else must know better than I do. There was a period in my life when I constantly looked outside of myself for confirmation. Even in the moments when I already knew exactly how I felt, I still searched for someone else to validate it. I wanted reassurance. I wanted validation. I wanted permission to trust what was already true inside me. At the time, I told myself I was being thoughtful. I believed I was being careful, responsible, even wise. But underneath all of that, something quieter was happening. I was slowly disconnecting from my own authority, my inner sense of knowing, my ability to stand firm in myself without needing someone else to co-sign it. I would feel something internally and then immediately question it. I would seek advice, overanalyze, look for signs that someone else agreed with me. And if they didn't, I would often abandon myself, even when my body already knew the truth. What I didn't realize at the time was just how exhausting that pattern really was. Every time I overrode myself, every time I dismissed what I felt or deferred to someone else's opinion, I was quietly reinforcing the belief that my own inner knowing couldn't be trusted. I didn't see it then, but each small moment of self-abandonment added up. And over time, that kind of disconnection creates real consequences. It can show up as anxiety that seems to come out of nowhere. It can turn into confusion about what you want or how you feel. It can lead to emotional dependency where you feel unable to move without someone else's input. It can grow into chronic self-doubt that follows you into every decision. Not because you're incapable, not because you're broken, but because you've drifted away from yourself, away from your own inner guidance, your own authority, your own truth. Ask yourself gently, without pressure, without judgment. Where in my life do I already know what I feel, yet still find myself looking outward for confirmation? Let this be an invitation, not an interrogation. Pause here. Give your body a moment to settle. Let the answer rise in its own time, in its own way, with as much honesty as you're able to meet it with today. You don't have to force clarity, just allow it. From a nervous system perspective, outsourcing your power often does feel regulating at first. There's a reason for that. Certainty feels safe. Predictability feels safe. And when you're unsure or overwhelmed, leaning on an external authority can temporarily soothe the discomfort of not knowing. But here's the problem. Temporary relief is not the same thing as freedom. It may calm the moment, but it doesn't strengthen your capacity to trust yourself. In fact, every time you hand your authority away, every time you defer to someone else instead of listening inward, you subtly weaken the relationship you have with yourself. Over time, that pattern doesn't just shape your choices, it shapes your identity. It shapes your sense of safety. It shapes the way you move through the world. There was another moment in my life when I chose to approach things differently. I felt uncertain. I could feel the familiar pull toward seeking reassurance, toward wanting someone else to tell me what the right move was. Every part of me wanted to reach outward for clarity. But this time, instead of immediately abandoning myself, I paused. I stayed with my own experience. Not perfectly. My mind still wobbled. Not confidently. My body still felt unsure. But I stayed honestly. I let myself remain in the discomfort long enough to hear what was happening inside me, instead of rushing to drown it out with someone else's certainty. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't polished. But it was real. And it was mine. What surprised me most was this. The clarity I had been searching for outside myself began to grow stronger inside me the moment I stopped abandoning myself long enough to actually hear it. It wasn't because I suddenly had all the answers or magically became certain. It wasn't because doubt disappeared. It was because, for the first time in a very long time, I stayed connected to my own knowing. I didn't run from it. I didn't override it. I didn't hand it away. And that shifted something fundamental in me, something quiet but unmistakable. It was the beginning of rebuilding trust with myself. This is the deeper truth. Outsourcing your power can create a sense of temporary emotional safety. It can soothe the nervous system for a moment, offering the illusion of certainty and the comfort of someone else taking the lead. But sovereignty, the ability to stand on your own authority, creates something entirely different. Sovereignty creates freedom, and freedom has a different texture, a different weight, a different feeling in the body. Freedom says, I can listen to myself. I can tolerate uncertainty without collapsing. I can make decisions without needing constant external permission. I can stay connected to myself even when others disagree or don't understand. That is real power, the kind that grows from within, the kind that can't be taken away because it isn't borrowed from anyone else. Let me ask you something honestly. When uncertainty rises in your body, what do you reach for first? Do you turn inward toward yourself? Or do you instinctively reach outward for someone else's approval? If you're open to it, share one word in the comments: self or approval. Awareness is the moment everything begins to shift. Reclaiming your power can feel uncomfortable in the beginning. It asks you to step into spaces you may have spent years avoiding. It means learning to tolerate uncertainty instead of rushing to escape it. It means making choices without guarantees, trusting that you can handle whatever unfolds. It means reconnecting with your internal signals, the ones you may have ignored, overridden, or doubted for a long time. And for many people, that level of self-trust feels vulnerable. It can feel raw, exposed, unfamiliar. But vulnerability isn't a sign that you're doing it wrong. It's often the doorway into sovereignty, the place where you stop abandoning yourself and start standing with yourself. That's where real power begins to take root. Let's practice something simple together. Bring to mind a situation where you have been seeking outside validation, someplace in your life where you already feel the truth inside you, yet you still look outward for confirmation. Hold that situation gently in your awareness. Now pause. Let your breath settle. Let your body soften just a little. And ask yourself, if no one else could answer this for me, what do I already know? Not what feels safest, not what feels most approved or most acceptable, but what feels true, quietly, honestly, beneath the noise. Let that truth rise without forcing it. Your inner knowing is still there. This doesn't mean never seeking support. Guidance is healthy. Community is healthy. Learning is healthy. But there's a difference between receiving perspective and abandoning your own authority. One expands you. The other disconnects you from yourself. You do not need to know everything in order to trust yourself. You don't need perfect clarity, perfect confidence, or perfect certainty. You only need to stay connected to yourself honestly enough to hear what's already there. Beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the habit of looking outward. Because sovereignty isn't about perfection. It isn't about always being right or never feeling doubt. Sovereignty is about self-connection, returning to yourself again and again, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels unfamiliar. That's where trust begins, and that's where your power lives. Outsourcing your power may feel safer in the moment. It can offer a quick sense of relief, a temporary calm, a way to avoid the discomfort of uncertainty. But over time, it costs you something precious, something far more valuable than the momentary comfort you gain. It costs you your freedom. It costs you your clarity. It costs you your relationship with yourself. And those are losses that accumulate quietly until one day you feel the distance between who you are and who you've become. Reclaiming that connection is where everything begins to shift. You do not need anyone else's permission to stay connected to yourself. Your inner knowing is yours to honor. It doesn't require approval, agreement, or validation to be real. When you stop abandoning your own truth, when you choose to stay with yourself instead of outsourcing your clarity, you begin to reclaim your freedom. Not all at once, not perfectly, but moment by moment, choice by choice, breath by breath. That's how self-trust is rebuilt. That's how sovereignty returns. I'll see you next time.